During my 15 years as a federal prosecutor in Syracuse, New York, I witnessed firsthand on a daily basis the devastating impacts of drug use in general, and heroin in particular, and the terrible impacts it had on the well-being of our children, the lives of those directly involved, and the safety of our community. Tragically, the impact of heroin and other opioids has gotten much worse in recent years. As a federal prosecutor, I've seen a possible drug known to man on the streets. I've never seen anything with the devastating effects that heroin has on our communities. Literally, fatal incidents are happening on a regular basis. One of my top priorities during my time in Washington has been to facilitate a community dialogue on this public health epidemic to discuss ways of treating and preventing addiction. Mr. Speaker, at every forum, every town hall, every business I visit, every hospital I visit, I hear from my constituents the devastation this epidemic is inflicting on our communities. I hear tragic stories about friends or family members succumbing to heroin addiction. I hear from medical workers and first responders about the strain this epidemic is placing on the resources. I hear stories of pain and loss, and I want to share a few of those with you to illustrate what I'm talking about. During the course of the 6 town halls I've conducted or participated in throughout my district over the last several months, we routinely heard stories of victims, in particular their families, of loved ones they've lost. One individual really caught my attention. They all caught my attention, but this one was pretty devastating. Morgan Axe was a beautiful young woman, a great athlete, just a great kid overall, who battled addiction with heroin for several years. At 24 years old, she became pregnant, and she stopped taking heroin completely to protect her baby, stopped taking any drugs that would help her with her cravings, and was doing great. At the 5th month, 5 months of being clean, a boyfriend thought it would be a good idea to give her a dose of heroin, and we have the telephone records to show it. And she took that heroin, and she died, as did her baby. And her mother had to come to that forum and talk about this. And I applaud her for the openness with which she talks about it, the pain that she shared with us, and the lessons that can be learned. It can happen to anybody. It's not an inner city drug. When we were growing up, we used to think of heroin users as individuals who would be under a bridge somewhere in an alley. Well, that's not the way it is. It affects suburbs, wealthy, poor, and everyone in between. One other quick story. When I was renting my congressional office, the individual that was showing me the office had a sad look in his eye and began to tell me a story about his daughter, who was the Final Four MVP for lacrosse at NCAA junior college lacrosse the year before. And she had died of a heroin overdose because she got into heroin after that championship. It's an epidemic with enormous consequences, and it's getting worse. The epidemic of addiction is claiming lives from every age, class, and race, like I mentioned. And I know society doesn't like to talk about drugs, addiction, and overdose, but this is a problem that we can no longer ignore and one that we must absolutely positively address. And the scourge must be stopped. And I'm absolutely proud to be part of the House action being taken this week on several measures that will help to fight against this growing opioid epidemic through the passage of my drug kingpin bill earlier today. Much remains to be done, and I hope that Congress will build on its actions this week and continue to work on efforts in a bipartisan manner to fight back and save people from addiction. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.